Hello everyone, this is the Familiar DAVENER number 20, wishing everyone a Gemar Tov after Yom Kippur. And on that note, I have a very simple question. Why is it that God decided that we barely have a break? We literally go right into regular life right after Yom Kippur. We are on such a spiritual high on Yom Kippur, being like angels that don't eat and don't drink and wear white, etc. And literally we go right back to life the next day. I'd like to give two answers. Number one, we don't. And number one, yes, we do. Number one, we don't. Just 4 days after Sukkot, after Yom Kippur is Sukkot. The Torah in his Code of Jewish Law says that the first time you can possibly do an Aveira is on the first day of Sukkot. He homiletically quotes a medrash that says, "Ulekachtem lachem bayom harishon," and you shall take on the first day. It doesn't just mean take the lulav and etrog, it's the first day that a Jew can possibly do an Aveira. He's so busy building a sukkah, buying his lulav and etrog, they don't have time to do Aveiras. But only when you sit back in the sukkah, finally, you have time to once again slander and do things that you shouldn't. In a word, we're not going back to regular life. And living in the sukkah in and of itself is not living at home. A home is very holy, but a sukkah has the same status as a korban chagiga, as a real sacrifice in the temple, with all the laws that pertain to it. And from this perspective, the entire structure of the sukkah is basically a story of Torah law. How tall the walls have to be, how do you cover it. It's far from being just a home where there's one law, and that is put a mezuzah on your doorpost. From this perspective, we're not going back to regular life. We have a transition period. It's called the days before Sukkot, in the preparation of, and then, of course, Sukkot itself. Maybe that's the reason that the Natzivim Volozhin, in his commentary on the She'iltot, says that it's not only a mitzvah to live in the sukkah, there's a mitzvah to make and to create a sukkah, and that's why the Yerushalmi contemplates that maybe we should make a bracha on actually building the sukkah. We don't paskin that way, but the very thought means that all this entire period is far from being a normative one. But there's a second answer, and that's exactly the point. God doesn't want us to be angels all year. That's easy to do for one day. Try to be a mensch and a good Jew when life continues as usual and you're doing all your routine activities. In other words, the real challenge of Yom Kippur starts on the night after Yom Kippur. How are you going to break the fast? What are you going to talk about at the meal and what you're not going to talk about at that break fast meal? How are you going to act? How are you going to respond? The real test is indeed the day after Yom Kippur, when you go back to quote-unquote regular life, but hopefully with the climax of Yom Kippur, you don't go back to the things you'd rather regret and talked about on Yom Kippur. So to sum up, we only have 4 days between Yom Kippur and Sukkot. That's what God ordained, and I wasn't there in the editorial board to understand why. But we suggested two answers. One, these are far from normative days, and therefore we omit tachanun in davening, and therefore we're very busy and we can't even do Aveira, says the Torah. But number two, that's exactly the point. We actually should go back to regular life and yet not be the same regular person we were before Yom Kippur.